Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Spiramus Press. We've reviewed a number of Spiramus Press books in the past. They're of very high quality, extremely useful for financial services advisors, lawyers and accountants. And the market that Spiramus go for is certainly markets involving small to medium businesses and people who are looking for specific advice. And today I'm looking at a book which has come to us on value-added tax. It's VAT and Financial Services. It's now in a third edition. It's a very popular book which Spiramus have produced, and it's been written by Mark Chesham, who comes from Moore Stephens. The book's available as a paperback and also in a digital edition. And as I've indicated, I think these books are of great help to us as practitioners. Now, the book review I've given, the title for our review, is For All Those Advisors Involved in Tax and Financial Affairs, covering value-added tax. You need the third edition of the book now. And that's right, because you've got to keep up to date with what's actually available. Let's look at the book first. There's the front cover, and there is the spine. And there is the back, and you'll see there's quite a lot of information. And at the bottom there's some information about the author as well. But I've borrowed a little bit of the information from the back of the book just to indicate what's in the book itself. Opening it up, there's a very small index, page numbering index at the back. It's not very big, but Spiramus never really go into index in a big way. There are some appendices at the back, and if we go to the front of the book, you can see there the basic information about Spiramus and some detail about Mark Chesham. And then you've got the contents section. You see quite a lot of detail. The contents actually for Spiramus are always quite detailed. So you should be able to find, just flicking through these pages now, you should be able to find what you're looking for quite quickly. You can see that there are 7 appendices at the back of the book itself. These are extracts and various pieces of information that I think you will find of help. Then you've got the table of authorities, and not a lot of cases in this area, but there are a few which are quite important. Then you have Acts of Parliament as well, and then some regulations, treaties, directives and so forth. Then we go into the book itself. Starts with an introduction to set out what this book is all about. I always like the quote from Anthony Barber, many years ago now: "That will be a simple tax on the supply of goods and services." So when it was introduced by him as Chancellor of the Exchequer in 1972, and here we are in 2017. So there has been quite a lot of history to this over the years, one way or the other. And of course Stephen Sedley, Lord Justice Sedley, has given a nice comment as well. He says, "Beyond the everyday world lies the world of VAT, a kind of fiscal theme park in which factual legal realities are suspended or inverted." Well, there you get an interesting view from his lordship. Now this is the book here, and then just running through you can see there's paragraph numbering and quite a lot of very substantial detail. You can see the detail of the paragraph numbering there. And as I say, at the back, the actual index itself is by page numbering. Runs to about 250 odd pages. It's, I think, a very useful book for the layman as well as the advisor. Now, what do we say about the book? Well, in our short review, we say this: Spiramus have a great mission for all of us involved in the world of intricate finance and tax. And it's about communication, in fact. And the list of users of this book would include lawyers, accountants, advisors, those running a business, and public servants, of course. So along comes the new third edition of this work, VAT and Financial Services, ably written and compiled by Mark Chesham of Moore Stephens. And he does give us a lot of help, because we do need help in this area, even if you follow what Stephen Sedley made comments about, and he was obviously quite clearly politically opposed to the views of Anthony Lord Barber as Chancellor of the Exchequer. But at the end of the day, we have VAT and we have to know what to do with it. However intricate or exotic or whatever it might be, we've got it there and we've got to deal with it. And also, of course, it's one of the dreaded taxes which is linked to the European Union, and we are going to be leaving the European Union in the not too distant future. So we may have some changes that take effect, but I wouldn't expect that much in the way of changes on fiscal policy. Just in case you think it may be, don't hold your breath. Okay, so what do we say about the book then? The publishers always offer us some first-class professional support for the practitioner advice that we actually pass on to clients. And so the new edition of this work on VAT is, I think, most welcome at this time, because it's a difficult time for the British economy with the serious implications arising from our decision to leave the EU whenever that happens. And Chesham embarks the reader on a journey through all the relevant and current legislation and the main case law authorities without overburdening us. And I think that's another useful thing, because there is an awful lot of litigation and there's an awful lot of authority which you need to look at. But this book is primarily aimed at giving you, as it says here, a statement on VAT and financial services. And what Chesham does is he reviews the legal concepts such as time and place of supply in a very succinct manner, and covers a distinction, of course, between goods and services, I think, in a very useful way, so that we can understand exactly what the differences are. Now, the question often posed is, what is taxable? Now, that is explored in some detail, plus, of course, the interaction and mix of time, place, goods and services, as I've indicated a few minutes ago. And I think to get that balance is very, very important for an understanding of how to compile your tax return and know what you're doing. I actually am not registered at the moment for VAT. I have been some years ago, and I found it incredibly difficult. Even with assistance, I found it, frankly, a bit of a nightmare. Now, obviously, when you have to be registered, that's when you've really got to call on professional advisors to give you assistance. And I actually think it's well worth paying that little bit of money for that help. I know a lot of members of the bar feel the same way as I do, because of the intricacies and the problems when you're going to have an inquiry as to, how your return is, what is allowable and what isn't. You've therefore got to feel satisfied in yourself that you know what you've said is correct. Now, as I say, when you're looking at all of the various mixes of information, what Chesham does is he goes on to consider the consequences of outsourcing with a concentrated investigation of what he calls 10 significant cases. And I think, again, that will help anybody running a business. And I include in that lawyers, of course, and accountants. The new edition usefully goes on to evaluate key issues facing financial services and insurance at the present time, and it highlights the VAT cost-sharing exemption, which I think advisors will find helpful too. Now, after the second edition appeared in June 2015, only 2 years ago, there have been some important changes affecting these areas, such as the following: payment processing and card handling services, VAT on holding companies and on the right to deduct input tax. And in addition, we've got changes in litigation in the areas of special investment funds, pension fund management, partial exemption insurance and outsourcing, which have also, of course, occurred. So we're most grateful to see that crowdfunding for this edition, which is a fairly new method, of course, of raising funds for activities, has now been included, and that HMRC have issued guidelines on the VAT liabilities affecting transactions, which advisors, I think, must be familiar with. Because the key to this, and I feel probably from my experiences of what we used to call revenue law, the key to anything involving this is the huge amount of attention to detail. You must be meticulous, and you must basically be able to answer any questions that are being raised. Now, what Mark Chesham also does is he's included the 7 important appendices, which actually are indicated there at the back of the book, and there's a list at the front. And they cover the following areas, just so that you know what you're getting. This is the special expert additional information. You've got contracts of insurance, Lloyd's VAT arrangements, HMRC ABI partial exemption guidance for the insurance sector, TOGC legal extracts, guidance on the cost-sharing exemption, and the VAT territory of the EU. Now, the latter one, it's there at the moment. We don't know what will happen, but it's fairly clear to me that there's going to be a new edition of this before too long. But of course, I'm recording this after a general election where we've got a hung parliament. So I've got no idea at the moment as to what's going to happen in 2017 and 2018. We could have another election. We could have a major change of government. So we just don't know. Let me conclude then by a big thank you to everybody concerned, because as Spiramus point out, finance directors and finance controllers in the financial services and insurance sectors, and those professionals who advise on these sectors, we think will find the book very helpful indeed. Mainly because the publishers and their writers who are now producing what are well-established titles to what will be a new generation of users, and we remain very grateful for the assistance these books certainly give us and all the people involved in the sector. The reason is you make our lives much easier as a result. So thank you very much indeed. The third edition, as I say, was published in June 2017. That's when I'm recording this, and it's available digitally as well as in paperback form. Let's have a look at it. There's the front of it again. You can see then there is the spine, and then there's the back of the book. You can see again the back of the book is fairly well covered. Then just opening it in the middle, this is about insurance, you can see the structure. Paragraph numbering at the sides, and you've got some subheads, that's broker networks and web-based intermediaries. So you've got very much up-to-date information, and then you've got, for instance, right at the top there, a case, which will give you some practical guidance about what may happen where there are certain problems. And of course you've got a whole range of other things. Outsourcing is covered there, as I've indicated. Well, thank you very much, Mark Chesham. Thank you very much to Spiramus. And this does make our lives easier. So it's with great appreciation that I do this review, because I know how difficult this subject can appear for people with very limited knowledge, perhaps starting for the first time. I think this is a great friend and helper. So thank you. Bye-bye.